Imagine you coming home early, full of expectations to surprise your wife with a romantic dinner, but instead you come across a scene that freezes your heart. Your wife, the person with whom you shared your dreams and your life, in the arms of another man, an old friend. The initial shock gives way to profound pain, the feeling of betrayal cutting deeper than any physical wound could. And when you think there is nowhere else to turn, an unlikely ally presents herself, your wife's mother. She not only shares your indignation, but also proposes a plan of revenge that promises to turn the tables in a way you never thought possible. Together, you embark on a journey of calculated retaliation. But will revenge bring the satisfaction you seek, or will it pave the way for a series of revelations that will change your life forever? On that cold autumn night, instead of the warm reception I expected, I found a suspicious silence. My heart was pounding hard, foreshadowing the worst. The unfamiliar shoes in the entrance were the first sign that something was terribly wrong. The familiar atmosphere, once full of life, was now imbued with a disturbing stillness. As I approached the living room, reality struck me like a bolt of lightning. Alice and Daniel, together in a way that no husband would want to witness. The scene before my eyes seemed to freeze time, a betrayal not only of vows, but of a friendship I thought was unbreakable. "How could you?" The question escaped my lips before I could stop it, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and despair. Alice, caught off guard, stumbled over her words, trying to formulate an excuse, while Daniel, equally shocked, could barely look me in the eye. The excuse she tried to offer was weak, insufficient to cover the magnitude of the mistake made. I don't know what got into me. It didn't mean anything, I swear," she said, her voice faltering, her eyes begging for an understanding I was not willing to offer. At that moment, I realized that life as I knew it had changed forever. The trust we had built over the years crumbled in a matter of seconds. What should have been a safe and loving home had become the stage for a devastating betrayal. In the days that followed that devastating revelation, Alice's apologies multiplied, each one trying somehow to repair the irreparable. "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything to me," she repeated, as if the words could somehow erase what had happened, but each excuse only served to deepen the chasm between us. My heart, once full of love for her, was now heavy with a mixture of sadness and betrayal. It was in the midst of this whirlwind of emotions that I received the call from Skylar, Alice's mother. Her voice, calm and firm, was a welcome contrast to the chaos that had settled into my life. "We need to talk," she said. "There are things you need to know." The gravity in her voice and the respect I had always had for her led me to accept her invitation without hesitation. We met at that cafe, a neutral place where words could flow without the memory-laden walls of our home. Skylar looked at me with a mixture of compassion and determination. "What Alice did is unforgivable," she began, "but it's not the first time she's let herself be carried away by impulses without thinking about the consequences." The stories Skylar shared with me that afternoon opened my eyes to aspects of Alice that I, out of love or naivety, had chosen to ignore. "But we're not going to let this end like this," Skylar said, a spark of resolution in her eyes. "I'm going to show you how to teach her a lesson she'll never forget." The seriousness with which she said those words made me realize that this was not just an outburst from a disappointed mother, but the beginning of a meticulous plan of revenge. In that cafe, with the aroma of coffee permeating the air, Skylar revealed layers of Alice's personality that I had never known existed. She's always been like this, ever since she was little. Manipulative, always getting what she wanted no matter the cost, Skylar explained, sharing stories of Alice's childhood that left me perplexed. It was as if I had only known one facet of someone who had a dark side, skillfully hidden under the surface. But what shocks me the most, Skylar continued, is not what she did, but how much she thought she could get away with it. The disappointment in her voice was palpable, but there was also an iron determination, a willingness to set things right, not for blind revenge, but for a kind of distorted justice. It was then that Skylar proposed a plan, something so meticulous and detailed that it frightened me. We're going to make her understand the consequences of her actions, but in a way that she will never suspect you or me. Skylar outlined each step, from influencing the perception of the people around Alice to arranging situations that would publicly and humiliatingly expose her character flaws. The key here, she emphasized, is subtlety. We don't want her to realize it until it's too late. As Skylar spoke, I couldn't help but admire the depth of her knowledge about the human psyche and the complexities of social relationships. It was a diabolical plan, yes, but also a lesson that Alice needed to learn about respect, trust, and the true consequences of her actions. Skylar guided me through the plan with the precision of a master strategist. Each step was carefully planned to attack the pillars that sustained Alice's life: her career, her social reputation, and our relationship. Skylar knew that Alice valued her image above all else. It was her weak point, her Achilles heel, that we could exploit. The most effective revenge is one that strikes someone where they are most vulnerable, Skylar explained, her eyes glistening with a mixture of sadness and determination. She described how we would begin by subtly influencing the opinion of colleagues and friends about Alice, sowing doubts and uncertainties about her character. Skylar had already compiled a list of contacts who could help us, each with their own small role in the grand scheme of things. It won't be quick, but patience is a virtue in matters like this, she reminded me, emphasizing the importance of acting coldly, without letting emotions take control. The depth and detail of the plan were frightening. Skylar had thought of everything, from creating situations that would lead Alice to doubt her own competence, to ensuring that small scandals would emerge at the most inopportune moment for her. And most importantly, she taught me to maintain a facade of normalcy, so that Alice would never suspect me. As the plan unfolded in my mind, a mixture of admiration and terror enveloped me. Skylar was not just teaching me to take revenge, she was showing me how far someone could go when driven by a sense of injustice. This was not just a plan to destabilize Alice, it was a lesson about power, influence, and the depth of human anger. With Skylar's plan in motion, I began to move the pieces of the game with a dexterity I didn't know I possessed. The first phase was subtle, almost imperceptible. I used the information Skylar had given me to whisper doubts and insinuations into the right ears, watching as the seeds of mistrust slowly blossomed. It was a psychological game where every move had to be calculated to avoid suspicion. The transformation in Alice's work environment was gradual. Small comments here and there began to change the perception her colleagues had of her. They were subtle changes, but like a chain that gradually weakens over time, each broken link diminished Alice's strength in the office. "It's all about the narrative," Skylar had said, "changing the story people believe about her." Next, I staged the leaks of information about Alice's affair with Daniel. It was done with such care that, when the rumors began to circulate, no one could trace them back to me. Every step was taken with the discretion of a ghost, leaving Alice unaware of how her life was unraveling around her. This game of shadows was exhausting, but with every new crack that appeared in Alice's facade, I felt a bitter satisfaction. Skylar watched me from afar, a shadowy mentor whose approval I sought even unwittingly. She had turned me into an executor of her revenge, but in doing so, she had also shown me how far I was willing to go for justice. As time passed, the strategy to destabilize Alice advanced relentlessly. Her co-workers, once friendly and collaborative, began to drift away, leaving her increasingly isolated. It was like watching a play in slow motion, where each act drew another line of tension and mistrust around her. The rumors, once whispered in the hallways, were now openly discussed, each more distorted from the truth, but no less damaging. "How is this happening?" Alice asked me one night, her voice heavy with exhaustion and confusion. I could see the weight of the past weeks in her eyes, the uncertainty corroding what was left of her confidence. "I don't know, love," I replied, maintaining the facade of a concerned husband, while inwardly I followed every step of the meticulously drawn plan by Skylar. In this game of shadows, I had become a master at the art of manipulating perceptions, carefully orchestrating every detail to ensure that Alice would never suspect me. It was a role I played with cold efficiency, every gesture and word calculated to maintain the illusion of support and love. While behind the curtains, I pulled the strings that slowly unraveled the tapestry of her life. Alice's loneliness deepened, a reflection not only of her professional environment, but also of our personal life, where my emotional detachment added another layer of isolation. Watching her struggle against this rising tide of adversity, without knowing that I was part of the cause, filled me with an inner conflict I had not expected. Revenge did have a taste, but it was more bitter than I could have anticipated. The next step in Alice's downfall was bold and risky, a move that Skylar had conceived with surgical precision. It involved sabotaging one of her most important projects at work, one that would not only test her abilities to the limit, but also her resilience under pressure. With the discreet help of some of Skylar's contacts, we introduced subtle but fundamental flaws into the project, ensuring that they would only emerge when it was too late for Alice to recover. "Are you sure this will work?" I questioned Skylar, the uncertainty evident in my voice. "Trust me," she replied, her confidence unwavering. "Alice needs to learn the hardest lesson of all, that her actions have irreversible consequences." As the project unfolded, each planned flaw began to emerge, one after another, like dominoes falling in a meticulously planned sequence. Alice fought desperately to circumvent each new challenge, but with every solution she found, another flaw appeared, more complex and damaging than the one before. Watching Alice face this storm of adversity was painful. There were moments when compassion almost overcame me, whispering that perhaps it had all gone too far. But then I would remember the betrayal, the pain I felt, and any hesitation vanished, replaced by a cold determination to carry on with the plan. As Alice faced mounting difficulties, I took steps to distance myself even further, both emotionally and physically. This strategy, though part of the larger plan, began to weigh on my conscience. Seeing Alice, the person with whom I had shared so many moments of joy and sadness, unraveling under the pressure, forced me to question the morality of my actions. Am I doing the right thing? I would ask myself on sleepless nights, while the image of Alice, lost and confused, haunted me. The distancing was not only a tactic to increase her despair, but also a way to shield myself from the emotional consequences of what was to come. Each step I took away from her, each night spent in a separate room, each conversation avoided, was a reminder of the growing fissure between us. Yet this detachment also gave me clarity, a vision unclouded by love or anger, but focused on the ultimate goal of our revenge. "You seem distant lately," Alice commented one night, her voice trembling with the insecurity our interactions had taken on. "Is everything okay?" Her question, simple on the surface, carried layers of fear and hope, a silent plea for reassurance that I knew I could not give. "Everything is fine," I lied with a forced smile, while my heart tightened with the untruth. It was necessary, I repeated to myself, a mantra to calm the storm of doubts that threatened to engulf me. This game of masks, where each of us hid our true selves, became our new reality. Me, the loving husband on the surface, but cold and calculating underneath. Her, the unfaithful wife and now the victim of a meticulously orchestrated revenge. This ballet of hidden emotions and intentions danced around us, a constant reminder of the complexity of human relationships and the ease with which love can transform into something unrecognizably dark. The decisive moment came during a charity event, a perfect stage for the final act of our revenge. Aided by Skylar's contacts, I set an impeccable trap, ensuring that Alice would be at the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. The situation, meticulously planned, would seem like an accident, a momentary lapse of judgment on her part, but the consequences would be devastating and public. "Just make sure everything appears natural," Skylar instructed me one last time, her voice a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. "We cannot leave any trails that lead back to us." And so it was. At the height of the event, Alice, unaware, triggered the trap, revealing a secret that cast her in an extremely negative light before everyone present. The shock and humiliation on her face when the truth came out is something I will never forget. For a moment, I felt a twinge of triumph, the sweet taste of revenge finally materializing. But that feeling was quickly replaced by a profound emptiness. What have I done, I thought, watching the scene unfold, Alice's life shattering before everyone. This act not only marked the end of Alice's career and reputation, but also the end of the person I was before this revenge. The surrounding crowd murmured, judged, and I, in their midst, felt more isolated than ever. I had crossed a line, driven by pain and betrayal, but now, seeing the result of my actions, I questioned whether the justice I sought was worth the price paid. As I watched Alice try to recompose herself after the scandal, I realized how deeply we had both been transformed by this journey of revenge. Skylar's plan had been executed with precision, but the victory we had imagined savoring was poisoned by remorse and loss. Alice stood before me, a shadow of the vibrant, confident woman she used to be, broken not only by her own actions, but by mine as well. Reflecting on the events that had unfolded, I began to question the very essence of revenge. Was it worth it? I asked myself, as I witnessed the devastating consequences of our actions. Revenge had cost us dearly, shattering not only the relationship we had, but our very integrity. In that moment of clarity, an uncomfortable truth revealed itself. In seeking justice for the pain Alice had caused me, I had lost myself. The person I was before this revenge, someone who believed in compassion and forgiveness, now seemed a stranger. There was a bitter irony in the fact that, in trying to teach Alice a lesson, it was I who learned the hardest truth. The realization that revenge had left me empty was a hard blow. Alice and I, each in our own way, had been consumed by our own flaws and poor choices. The journey to this point had been marked by pain and betrayal, but also by choices that, once made, could not be undone. In the months that followed, Alice's life became a mirror reflecting the shadows of our past choices. Without a career and with a destroyed reputation, she faced isolation not only from co-workers and friends, but also from family who had once offered her a safe haven. I, in turn, found myself navigating equally turbulent waters, though of a different nature. The detachment I had created to facilitate my revenge now surrounded me like a thick fog, obscuring the path back to any semblance of normalcy. What have we become? This question echoed in my mind often, reverberating through the empty walls of the home we had shared. Watching Alice struggle against the consequences of our actions, unable to rely on the support of those she needed most, brought a painful clarity. We had lost much more than just our relationship. The irony was that in the pursuit of justice, we had inflicted irreparable damage upon ourselves. Revenge, a flame that consumed all in its wake, left only ashes. Alice, despite her flaws, was not the only one suffering the consequences of our actions. I too paid the price. Loneliness, a constant companion, was a reminder of the cost of our personal war. In this moment of introspection, an inescapable truth became clear. Revenge may offer momentary relief, but the void it leaves behind is a pit that cannot be easily filled. Alice and I, united by our past choices, now faced the future separately, each carrying the weight of our own mistakes. The irony of our situation did not escape me. While I had meticulously planned Alice's downfall, I had never anticipated the emotional cost I would pay. Revenge, a force I thought I could control, ended up controlling me, leading me down a path I never wished to tread. Loneliness and reflection became my constant companions, forcing me to face the reality of my actions and their unintended consequences. Was it worth it? The question repeated in my mind, a constant reminder of the price of revenge. With each passing day, the answer became clearer and more painful. I had lost more than a wife. I had lost a part of myself, an innocence and a belief in goodness that had once guided my steps. On the rare occasions I crossed paths with Alice, whether in town or at social events we were both still a part of, I saw the hurt and regret in her eyes. They were mirrors of my own feelings, reflecting the pain and remorse we both shared. "I'm sorry," she whispered once as she passed by me, an attempt to mend the irreparable. That simple word, laden with meaning, was a reminder that, despite everything, humanity persists even in the darkest of circumstances. Revenge had been my choice, but remorse and a desire for redemption became my salvation, a path to rebuild what had been broken, not between Alice and me, but within myself. That casual encounter in the park, where I witnessed a couple sharing a moment of pure joy, was the catalyst for a profound change within me. Watching them, I realized how far I had strayed into the darkness of revenge and resentment. The uncomplicated happiness I saw in that couple was something I had forgotten existed, something that, in the midst of my pursuit of justice, I had completely neglected. That epiphany hit me with force, as if the scales had fallen from my eyes, allowing me to see the extent of the damage I had inflicted on myself and Alice. "This is what truly matters," I whispered to myself, a silent acknowledgement that the pursuit of revenge had led me astray from what is truly important in life: connection, love, and forgiveness. I decided then that it was time to seek a fresh start, not in the hope of rekindling what had been irrevocably lost with Alice, but to find peace and redemption within myself. That day in the park marked the beginning of an inward journey of healing, a painful and revelatory process that led me to confront the darkest parts of myself and, finally, to accept them. This process of self-discovery was not easy. It required me to face uncomfortable truths about myself and the choices I had made. But in doing so, I began to find fragments of the person I used to be, before pain and betrayal led me down a path of destruction. The conversation I had with Alice after our long journey of pain and revenge was undoubtedly one of the most difficult of our lives. We sat face to face, the weight of our shared mistakes pressing the space between us. "I never wanted things to reach this point," she began, her voice trembling with the sincerity of her remorse. Her words opened a door to a brutal honesty we had long avoided. "Neither did I," I replied, the bitterness in my voice giving way to a deeper sadness. We discussed our failings, the moments where we went wrong, and how each choice led us further apart. It was a conversation filled with what-ifs and painful acknowledgements, but necessary for us to begin healing the wounds we had both inflicted. What surprised me most was Alice's ability to admit her flaws, to sincerely apologize not only for the betrayal, but for the impact of her actions on everyone around her. "I am truly remorseful," she said, looking into my eyes, a vulnerability I had not seen in a long time. That moment of mutual vulnerability was a reminder that despite everything, there was still a connection between us, a tacit understanding forged through the years we had shared. Though we knew the path ahead meant moving apart, there was a strange comfort in acknowledging that our shared history still held value, even if the ending was not what we had hoped for. That conversation with Alice was a turning point, marking the beginning of a healing process we both desperately needed. It was not a reconciliation of our mistakes, but an acceptance of them, a recognition that, despite the deep harm caused, there was still a path forward, albeit separately. Over time, this painful exchange of truths transformed into an unspoken understanding, an unvoiced agreement to leave the past behind and seek peace, each in their own way. In the months that followed, we dedicated ourselves to rebuilding our lives, distant yet paradoxically united by this decision to move forward. The physical and emotional distance between us allowed a new perspective to blossom, one where resentment gave way to a kind of sad respect for what we had shared and, ultimately, lost. This healing process was not linear. It was marked by ups and downs, moments of longing mixed with others of relief at being on separate paths. But with each step taken towards self-knowledge and acceptance, a new strength emerged within me, a determination to find happiness and peace, not as revenge or proof of superiority, but as an inherent right. Alice's and my journey from love to betrayal and ultimately to a kind of redemption is a testament to the complexity of human relationships and the capacity for resilience. I learned that true revenge is not found in the destruction of the other, but in the rebuilding of oneself, a process that, though solitary, reveals the resilience of the human spirit. In the end, looking back, I see the tortuous path we trod, marked by betrayal, revenge, and finally, redemption. The journey was painful, but essential for our personal growth. Alice and I followed separate paths, each of us carrying the scars and lessons learned from this tumultuous experience. Perhaps the most valuable lesson was the understanding that true strength lies in the ability to forgive and move forward, not bound by the past, but guided by the hope of a better future. This story, so personal and complex, reveals the depths of human nature, our flaws, and our incredible capacity for resilience. And so, after a turbulent journey marked by painful revelations and meticulously planned acts of revenge, we reach the end. The story of a devastating betrayal and a revenge that unfolded in unexpected ways reminds us of the complexity of human relationships and the fine line between love and hate. In the end, what remains is the reflection on our actions and the consequences they entail, not only for others, but for ourselves. And you, what would you do in the place of our protagonist? Would you have followed the path of revenge or chosen a different path? Share what you would do. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to keep following more stories like this one. Your opinion is valuable to us, and each story is an invitation to explore together the diverse facets of human nature. See you in a new story.